The headline is Paul Bilzerian ran cannabis company while owing government more than $180 million, the feds allege. Now, this is, I don't know, I want to say comical, but it's comical because this guy, Bilzerian, was a corporate takeover guy, and he got indicted and convicted back in the late 1980s, sentenced to 4 years in prison for tax and securities fraud. And the SEC brought a civil suit against him and got a $62 million judgment in 1993. And by 2000, he hadn't paid a nickel. So he was held in contempt. They sent him to receivership. And since all of this started, they've gotten $500,000 out of him. And it's up to $180 million now that he owes. So he's finding ways to hide and duck and be undercover. But the way that they're claiming he did it was that his son, Dan Bilzerian, who, if you don't know who the guy is, he's the famous poker player, the influencer, and my daughter Heather reminded me he's a massive misogynist, and, I'll take her at her word. He had this company called Ignite. And Ignite's a Canadian company, sells vape products and other lifestyle brands and things like that. And the allegation from the federal government is that Paul was the de facto runner of this company, and he set up just a shitload of shell companies to hide his investments and his money. And so last Thursday, Paul Bilzerian, his longtime accountant, Scott Rollader, and Ignite were indicted by the federal government on charges of conspiracy to defraud the U.S., conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to commit securities fraud, and 4 counts of wire fraud. Now, Friday, the SEC brought another civil action against them, and the thrust of what they're saying here is that beginning in 2018, Paul Bilzerian was having sometimes daily meetings and running the company, had influence on who was on the board, who the executives were, all while living down in St. Kitts, and that there was a scheme in 2020 to pump up the stock value. There was millions of dollars of vape sitting in a warehouse somewhere, and they, on their taxes, said, oh, it's been sold to some distributor they work for, and the distributor said, no, we're not taking that. We didn't buy it. It ain't ours. And when they did an audit and they couldn't confirm it, what they did was backdate paperwork to show that they had sold it to some other company. And this is where it gets confusing to me. I don't think this shell company that Paul Bilzerian owned has a cannabis license. So I'm not sure how they transferred cannabis to them. But maybe we'll find some of that out as this case goes forward. Now, what they have alleged here is that Paul uses straw men to run all these companies. And I have encountered this a couple of times in my practice here in California, where companies are being effectively run by somebody who's hiding in the shadows. Okay? And Paul Bilzerian, if these allegations are true, was the ultimate, I'm hiding in the shadows, I've got millions of dollars, and I'm going to keep it away from the government trying to get it. Now, I don't know where this is going to go because Paul Bilzerian and this guy, Scott Rollader, these charges that they're indicted for carry 20 years prison sentences for the wire fraud, each of them. And the others are 4 or 5 years in prison. Looking some heavy time here. And the SEC civil suit is going after millions of dollars in lost taxes that would have been realized by them being honest about these insider sales they were making that were really just fraudulent transfers, and it looks like it's tax evasion and tax fraud. Now, I can tell you that I get really irritated in my practice when I've run into people that use straw men and they're running a company. And in California, if you have any management or control over a business, you have to declare it and you have to be out front about it. And I've had at least 2 occasions where there were people hiding in the shadows. When I found out, I was not real nice about it, because this is basically fraud. It's the regulators will come in and take your licenses away if you do this. But my recommendation is not to do it. But this is just going to get more interesting, because what the feds want is they want their $180 million out of Paul Bilzerian. And if I'm a betting man, they've got some inside snitches, because some of the details we're providing here, unless they got wiretaps going on, they've got people inside that are ratting this guy out for, these daily meetings we're having. And when he got the sense the feds were after him, he declared that he and his accountant were unpaid consultants. Which, if you believe that, I've got some swampland by Phoenix to sell you. Okay. So this is going to get interesting. To emphasize, these are only allegations to this point. Nothing's been proven, but it smells really bad. I'm going to throw this back at you. What do you all think about this?
Well, I have some thoughts about this for sure. Usually when the SEC sanctions you, they would appreciate you actually staying out of the business they've asked you to stay the fuck out of. So, I've dealt with a former situation where we're probably still in a fucking lawsuit. I'll have to check and see how many more there are, where this exact thing happened, right? Somebody was sanctioned, told not to even touch penny stocks, not to do anything, and that was in lieu of them going their ass to jail the first fucking time. So what do? They have some other people sit up and say that they're running this, and a lot of emails come just signed by corporate services and shit like that. I mean, it's not that hard to track down, but it almost always is somebody inside that would have to give these details up. And I don't know how much you guys know about Dan Bilzerian, but he's kind of an ass. In fact, he's such an ass. I ripped him a new one on Instagram when he first came out saying they were going to take over cannabis, and he apologized to me publicly. So I appreciate that one. But I could see them not being America's favorite family. When you're a jerk and you're doing something wrong, the people who you're a jerk to often will call the SEC or the IRS or whom the fuck ever. So I can't wait to see this unfold, and I hope that these guys get punished the way they should and aren't able to scapegoat themselves out of this because they're rich.
I just think Ignite was ahead of their time, man. They were just ahead of their time, and they didn't have the right crowd to sell to. They came out here when cannabis was being taken over by women here in California, and things were starting to be a lot more gender neutral when it came to control and shit like that. Dan Bilzerian wanted to bring it back and brought the MAGA crowd to the industry.
No. Do not sit. He cannot sit at our table.
He did.
Can't sit at our table. Absolutely not.
Hold on. I'll let you speak your piece. Let me speak mine. He brought the MAGA crowd. He brought the MAGA crowd in, and he came out here with scantily clad women doing the damn thing. And my biggest gripe with him is like, none of them women had booties. Not even one of them. Like all of them had small, like skinny ass girls walking around. I'm like, yo, what the hell are y'all doing? But that
Sir
was
Mix-a-Lot would not have want none. Is that what you're saying?
That was his idea of what cannabis was going to be, and he wanted to bring things back to where what he thought his idea of what cannabis should be today. I just really did love him getting exposed for taking a torch to a banger on an e-nail live on Instagram. That was my favorite Dan Bilzerian Ignite moment.
I think one thing we should clarify too, though, is Dale, these are currently just allegations. Nothing's been proven. But Paul Bilzerian has been convicted of securities fraud in the past. He was sentenced to, I don't remember the exact sentence. I want to say like 16 years or something like that, and fined. I think
4 years.
It was 4 years. Okay.
He only served 13 months. That's what happens when you're rich. I got 5 years and served 52 months, so I didn't have enough money to get people to get my ass out.
The $180 million, if I recall correctly, was originally like a $60 million judgment or a fine against him, and it's accrued interest over the many years that he hasn't paid, which is why I'm happy to see this case. I hope they go and take all that money and give it to the victims of his securities fraud and his pump and dump and whatever other shenanigans he was up to.
Didn't they blow through like $100 million?
They blew through
cash?
hella money, bro.
And then
he had a rented house up in Hollywood Hills. I think that the rent was $50,000 a month or something like that.
They had all the most Rico, they had all the most expensive ad banners on the Sunset Strip.
Hey, hold on. That was Justin Bieber's old place, and then oh man, there's too many dots to connect.
Stop!
Oh my god!
So you're saying that you think that Dan Bilzerian could possibly be on the Diddy hit list when he releases it, because they said they said that if Diddy, if I remember this correctly, they said that if Diddy gives people up, he'll get like 30 years, and if he doesn't give people up, he's going to get life.
I guess the question with Dan Bilzerian is, did he did or did he didn't?
Or
I don't know.
Did he get named?
I ain't touching that one, man.
Did he get named or maimed? is the real question.
I mean, listen, the guy was a jerkbag. He's flying around in a private plane with pounds of cannabis talking
What's
about...
the matter with flying around in private planes? That is not a put
Especially
down.
if it's Epstein's old plane. What's wrong with that?
Just saying.
What's wrong with that, Jason?
Shut up, Jason. He was trying to make a mockery of it. Yes, Jason, I understand. He was trying to make a mockery of an industry that he wasn't a fucking part of. He pissed people off. And let's also acknowledge that when you're a whistleblower for the SEC and those entities, especially the tax entities, recover funds, you get paid out for that. So let me guess, secretary who's been treated like ass and slapped on the ass that she may or may not have for working for these guys the entire time. I bet she doesn't get paid enough to not want a chunk of that $180 million recovery.
I can't believe Rico
Not
was
to
body
mention
shaming him.
I don't have a buddy
their stock price took a beating. I'm sure they have some disgruntled investors that were happy to start sharing some information with the authorities.
It don't matter. He still got paid. Dan got paid.
Jason, and to go back to your point, there's nothing wrong with flying on private airplanes, but there is when you're using daddy stolen money to build California's most hated brand of mids.
What if it's Jeffrey Epstein's old plane?
Those are all allegations.
Is there anything wrong with that?
Those are all allegations. Those are all
allegations. Dad was convicted.
Hold on, I have a question for Jason. Why are you fucking capping for this guy right now? Why did you just go in the closet, iron your fucking cape out, and throw it on for the Bilzerian family, Jason?
I'm not.
Bilzerian is who Jason Beck sees when he looks in the mirror.
Jason's trying to find.
You're so silly, you guys.
Jason's trying to find a PJ to ride on to fucking BizCon is what it is.
I love PJs. I'm a big supporter of PJs. 100%.
Come on, dude. I
might point out that Dan has not been indicted, and he's only mentioned with the initials DB. But if I was his lawyer, I'd be shitting some bricks right now, because if his dad's running this company, what's Dan been doing? Okay, you just pretend like, I don't know where Dad is. And he's on a fucking Zoom meeting running your company. And he's running it in the ground and hiding his money. So if I was Dan Bilzerian, I would be making sure I've got my attorney on retainer and I've got some money for bailing myself out, because he's either going to rat his dad out or at some point he's going to be on the south side of this indictment himself.
And I think the most successful
he's the informant.
And shout out
I think the most successful portion they've had was they pivoted from cannabis into the nicotine vape sector, where they actually have had success. And I have to see this dumbass in Medellin because there was a nicotine conference at the same time. So they're doing well with that. There's money there to be taken by the.
And shout out,
maybe he'll be like El Chapo's kid. Come on, get on the plane, Dad. We're flying in.
Shout out to Steve Blassingham in the chat. Steve Blassingham in the chat. He says he was pretty douchey. He was kind of like an '80s MTV music video. But you know what, Steve? He didn't have the puffy hair. He didn't have the Aquanet puffy hair.
But he had the short shorts.
Dude, yeah. I told you he was ahead of his time. He had the short shorts, and he was bringing MAGA to cannabis. And word on the street is we have not heard from Dan Bilzerian, because he is just in the latest polls, he's showing to be beating Jason Beck out as the next cannabis czar of Donald Trump.
Stop the cap. And on that, we're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.